Let me tell you why you're here. You're here because you know something. What you know you can't explain, but you feel it. You felt it your entire life, that there's something wrong with the world. You don't know what it is, but it's there, like a splinter in your mind, driving you mad. It is this feeling that has brought you to me. Do you want to know what it is? It is the world that has been pulled over your eyes to blind you from the truth. Like everyone else, you were born into bondage, born into a prison that you cannot smell or taste or touch. A prison for your mind. All I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
You're listening to Hardcore Harry, and I am Death. To the New World Order, streaming to you live at freethinkradio.com, unitedtruthseekers.com, and eternally at d2nwo.com.
Let's talk about what could be the most explosive issue of this campaign if the mass media would get a hold of it and do something about it, but they're covering it up. And that is you were talking about the government involvement in drugs. There have been government investigations, there have been private investigations, and we've interviewed a lot of people, ex-CIA people, who have talked about the CIA involvement in drug operations for many decades. It's public knowledge, though once again the media are not saying anything about it, that Oliver North and his people involved with the Contras have been running drug operations, cocaine primarily, bringing it back into the United States. And there are other investigations which show that George Bush's office, Donald Gregg particularly, and the people he was working with, have been supervising an enormous drug operation, which once again was sending illegal arms down to the Contras and elsewhere, and bringing cocaine and other types of drugs back into the United States. But neither the Democrats aren't talking about this. Now, are the Libertarians talking about this, and do they put this into the framework of the drug law situation that you're talking about?
We talk about a whole lot. Of course, we always have the trouble of getting the attention that we think it deserves. There have been a few Democrats have talked about it. Senator Kerry's office has done some work.
He's done a lot of the investigation.
Right, and I think he's on to something, and I think we've gotten some other information too, of course, that the CIA has given Noriega over the years $200,000 a year.
Oh, yes.
And they kept feeding him money, even when Bush was the head of the CIA. I think George Bush is deep into it, well over his head. Somebody asked me once if I thought George Bush knew about as much was going on as Ronald Reagan. I think George Bush knew a lot more about what was happening in the CIA, because I think Reagan was probably more removed from it, I mean, just by his own personality and maybe his age or something. But I think George Bush, through his office and through the fact that he was a member of this, head of the CIA, I think he was very, very close to it. He knows exactly what was happening. And I believe the rule that once a CIA member, always a CIA member. And I think it's awful interesting. Can you imagine? It would alarm a few of us in this country if all of a sudden we knew that the leader in the Soviet Union would be the head KGB agent, and here we take our head CIA agent and put him, potentially the head of our entire country. Unfortunately, I wish that we could get this information out, and I continue to talk about it, but I sadly believe that there will be very little said, which means that the Democrat aren't doing it, that means they're involved too.
They're involved also.
And I don't think there's any doubt about it. I mean, it was even some of it got reported in the Iran-Contra scandals. We did know that there were drugs involved, and they were selling drugs back and forth. I think that might be the number one reason for the drug laws. I mean, they use and play on the good people of America to support them, but I think the number one reason is not to have high prices for some two-bit drug dealer, as much as to raise the funds necessary for governments to do illegal things, whether it's some terrorist government someplace or whether it's our own CIA to fund programs that they can't get Congress to fund. I think it's tragic, and the sooner we get rid of the drug laws, the sooner this would end.
Well, if there's one thing that you can say about Ron Paul, it's that he's consistent, isn't it? That interview is probably 25 to 30 years old. And just this go around as he's looking at running for president in one of the earlier debates. You know, he was basically accosted with the question. In other words, they didn't ask it in a nice manner. They basically asked him the question in an accusing manner, saying, well, you would prefer if heroin was legal, wouldn't you? Something like that. And he answered very well, saying that, you know, why do you need a law to tell you not to do heroin? It's not like if heroin became legal, all of a sudden everybody's going to say, oh, heroin's legal, so let's all go out and do heroin. You can say Ron Paul is consistent. Now, word is, and this is another breaking news story on the New World Order News, Herman Cain has dropped out of the presidential election for 2012. There's no word on who he is endorsing. The mainstream media is saying that Newt Gingrich stands the most to gain from Herman Cain's dropping out of the race. Newt Gingrich is New World Order. You need to understand that. Right now you can go to YouTube and put in Newt Gingrich, Nancy Pelosi, and you will find the two of them sitting on a bench, like boyfriend and girlfriend, running commercials to deceive you about global warming, you know, as part of the New World Order plot to get you to believe in that stuff so that you start advocating the depopulation of the human race. In other words, you advocate your own destruction. Newt Gingrich is New World Order. Now, let's get back to 30 signs the United States of America is being turned into a giant prison. As I said, just look around. You know what a prison yard looks like? Fences, cameras, towers. That's what America's starting to look like. And I've seen this specifically in Walmart parking lots. I've seen it in Cedar Point, where you park when you go to Cedar Point. They have now these police towers that, you know, like a scissor jack, the kind of jack where you jack up your car, and it's like a scissor type thing. They have towers now, like prison yard towers that are mobile, and they're on wheels. And you can basically drive it anywhere, park it, and then crank the thing and it goes up 50 feet in the air. A prison tower. And I have seen these prison towers in Walmart. I've seen these prison towers in a parking lot at Cedar Point. And other people have photographed them in other places. In other words, they can put up a prison tower anywhere. We see them making mass arrests. America is one giant prison now. And they may not have all the prison towers up yet. They may not have all the cameras up yet. But it's coming. It's all coming, and there's no doubt about that. If you live in the United States of America, you live in a giant prison where liberty and freedom are slowly being strangled to death. In this country, the control freaks that run things are obsessed with watching, tracking, monitoring, and recording virtually everything that we do. Nothing is private anymore. Everything that you do on the internet is being monitored. You can rest assured I'm being monitored. All of your phone calls are being monitored. In fact, if law enforcement authorities suspect you've done something wrong, they will use your cell phone microphone to listen to you even when you think your cell phone is turned off. In many areas of the country, when you get into your car, automated license plate readers track you wherever you go, which is quite unnecessary because the cars are all going to have GPS, OnStar. You know, you think that stuff is there to protect you, and sure, in some circumstances it might, but ultimately it's conditioning to get you used to it, because eventually you won't be able to go anywhere that they don't know you're at, unless you retain your ability to actually, you know, remain mobile on foot, and most people can't do that now. Not more than a couple 100 feet. They're worthless after that, and that's sad. In many major cities, when you're walking in the streets, a vast network of security cameras and smart street lights are constantly watching you and listening to whatever you say. Now, I can tell you from personal experience, when I was in New York near Ground Zero, and I have pictures. I mean, I've got tens of thousands of pictures, so I can't find it right now. But on one of the poles in New York City, there was this black thing. It was about this big, sticking up. And I'm looking at this, and I'm like, can that really be a microphone, a boom microphone, sitting here? And this is where we were all gathered, waking people. We had our Bristol boards set out, and we were truthing people, telling them what really happened, and we were telling them about the New World Order. They had a microphone set up. So this is true. They are listening. There's no doubt about it. Listening to whatever you say. The TSA is setting up internal checkpoints all over the nation. Homeland Security is encouraging all of us to report any suspicious activity their neighbors are involved in. And speaking of checkpoints, okay, you can put in Pastor Steven Anderson checkpoint. You'll find a Baptist pastor who was beaten, his face is all bloody, at a checkpoint inside the United States of America. It's sick what's going on. The TSA is setting up internal checkpoints all over the nation, and Homeland Security is encouraging all of us to report any suspicious activity. See something, say something. It's on the screens at Walmart. It's everywhere. Everywhere you could even think to go. Supposed to turn in your neighbors, and the federal government is rapidly developing pre-crime technology that will flag us as potential terrorists if we display any signs of nervousness. So now, just being nervous means you are probably a terrorist. Just being nervous is enough to get you strip searched at the airport, or your little boy or your little girl. It's unbelievable what's going on. If you're flagged as a potential terrorist, the United States military can arrest you and detain you for the rest of your life without ever having to charge you with anything. Yes, the United States of America is rapidly being turned into a big brother prison grid, and most Americans are happily going along with it. I don't know about the happily part, but most Americans are going along with it, and many of them are happily going along with it because they have been deceived into believing there's some great threat out there. They're living under the strong delusion. The very, very strong delusion. They are suffering from trauma-based mind control. And that's why we have to get to them and to release them from this trauma by making them realize they weren't attacked by the Muslims. The Muslims don't want to kill them. They were attacked by the New World Order. The New World Order wants to kill them. That's all you have to do. That doesn't mean overnight they're all of a sudden going to be okay with the Muslims. That can take some time. Unlike real life, when you can find out, okay, you thought somebody stole something from you, later on you find out they didn't, and then you're not mad at them anymore because you realize they didn't do it. But in this situation, we're dealing with mind control. And when you mind control people, especially an entire generation of people, as they did on 9/11, since 9/11, you can't turn that around overnight. It's going to take daily injections of the truth from people like me to the world. And it's going to have to happen day after day, week after week, month after month, and year after year, probably decade after decade, before we can turn this around. Almost surely that's what's going to take. And there are a lot of people who say, even if, for instance, let's say Ron Paul wins election. He's a truther. He understands what's going on. But there are some who say, even under those circumstances, you can't just tell the people the truth because they'll lose it. They will lose it. You know the whole "you can't handle the truth" thing? Well, maybe there's something to that. I'm not saying that's the right thing to do, but... You're listening to Hardcore Harry, and I am death to the New World Order, streaming to you live at freethinkradio.com, unitedtruthseekers.com, and eternally at d2nwo.com.
Shall now vote for approval of H.R. 8791, the Homeland Terrorism Preparedness Bill. Said bill requests emergency response funding up to and including, I'm sorry, this section is classified, dollars to prepare for national level terrorist attack and or attack from classified. Funding for first responder personnel and vehicles would be doubled if said attack leads to more than 80% of national population being affected by classified. This funding shall commence in conjunction with the first attack on classified or the first large-scale outbreak of classified, dependent upon which comes first. Civilian and military units shall be trained in containment and combat of classified, including irradiated classified with possibility of classified airborne, classified flesh-eating, classified and or all of the above in such event as classified spewing, classified escape are released or otherwise become uncontrollable. Air Force units may also be directed to combat said classified due to their enormous size and otherworldly strengths. Should event occur in urban areas, that's classified, far surpassing our darkest nightmares. Should casualties exceed classified body disposal actions shall be halted and associated resources shall be reallocated to classified underground, classified protected birthing centers. New Bill of Rights shall be drafted and approved by classified. New Bill of Rights shall be drafted and approved by classified. New Bill of Rights shall be drafted and approved by classified. Having now reviewed the bill, I ask you to please cast your votes.
We appreciate your call. Please stay on the line and a volunteer operator will be with you shortly. If you prefer to call back at a different time, our direct telephone number is 202-456-1111. Again,
That's what I called.
2-456-1111. For additional information about the White House, please visit www.whitehouse.gov.
No, thank you.
And to share your thoughts, click on the words "Contact Us" on the upper right-hand corner of the page.
Yeah.
For government information by topic, please visit www.usa.gov.
Unbelievable.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I just want to mention, because you're on the air, because I wouldn't want to be, oh God, after all, the FBI is recording this conversation. I'm just calling, you're on the air now. Of course, you cannot call the White House and probably get to somebody, although I have actually done this and got through. And I guess maybe what I've said and posted is working. Folks aren't able to get through because the phone lines are clogged. But we're going to sit here. I'm going to just wait. We'll just keep going.
Government information by topic,
Hopefully we'll get through to somebody.
www.usa.gov.
It's so funny because Clinton passed this law in 1996, the Telecommunications Act. So right now, my cell phone, they're tracking it right now if they want to. They triangulate the frequency by law. Every cell phone on October 2001 had to comply.
Good afternoon, this is the White House comment line. May I please speak to this comment for the President?
Yes, this is Howard Nima calling, and you're actually from on the air with InformRadio.com. Just calling to really with a tremendous amount of protest against the National Defense Authorization Bill 1867, and just urging the President to veto the bill, which basically turns the American people into criminals. It's like a fascist type situation. We've got, in fact, personally feeling that we should absolutely have these senators that voted for this bill. They should be impeached. This is out of control. The government is just out of control, and I just want to voice my opinion as an American, and again, just urge the President to quickly just say this is done. because this is we can't allow our country to fall to the tyranny of these criminal bankers that's hijacked so many interests that are so important to every single one of us, including yourself, ma'am. And I implore the president to just please veto that bill on behalf of my listeners and behalf of myself. And God bless America. Thank you. That's the White House. Okay, do it. See what I just did? Do it. Doesn't take long. Do it. They're getting a lot of calls. Do it. Don't be afraid of being a terrorist. Don't be afraid of being pulled out of your house. Don't be afraid of the federal government coming to your door in black suits with dark glasses, pulling you away. Like when Larry P. McDonald was saying, slowly moving to the left. Now we're speeding to the left towards communism and fascism with this endless war, military-industrial complex. It's a big problem. So Rand Paul has introduced legislation to block these provisions in the appropriations bill. Thank the Lord. We have liberty people like Rand Paul, who's young, and Ron Paul, who's running for president. Of course, obviously a threat to the establishment. Some people feel that he's a threat to the world as well.
On a side note, the provisions presented by Rand Paul were defeated. So you can be indefinitely detained.
But I don't know. I've never seen anybody that voted for liberty every time and never voted for all of this criminal activity and voted against all these wars and never took any, bad deals or was involved in any of this scandalous corruption. So I judge a man by his actions, not by what other people think of him. And really, that's what everybody should be done. Your record really is the truth. People like Clinton, and they say, oh no, that's the people that hate him, or the people that don't like President Obama. Same thing. It's not really true. If there are skeletons, there are skeletons. Period. Okay? If there aren't, what are they going to do? Say that that you have no chance of winning, that you can't win, that you can't do anything, that it's a joke, that you're radical, blah blah blah. Like me, I'm radical. Yes, I'm a radical. I'm a liberal.
Hello, this is Senator Joe Lieberman. If you've got a comment or suggestion you'd like to share with me, please press 1. If you would spread it button. Hello, this is Senator Joe Lieberman. Thanks for calling.
I'm going to give him a voicemail.
Please share your thoughts with me following the beep. If you'd like a response, leave your name, your email address, and your complete mailing address. Thanks very much.
Senator Lieberman, my name is Howard Nima. I am a Connecticut resident and absolutely appalled by the legislation that you covered here. I don't know what to say to you, sir, other than, in a dignified way. This is America. We have to be a constitutional government.
He should be shot in the face.
Incarcerate Americans without due process. We cannot allow our nation to be turned into a fascist dictatorship run by corporate and banking interests, sir. So with all due respect, yes, I would love to speak with you. In fact, you're live on the air here. This message is live on the air. And you're listening to NFormedRadio.com.
If you see something,
I see something, and I say something. I see corporate greed. I see a lot of cronyism. And I know that you're retiring, sir, so why don't you retire on a good note and stop supporting the New World Order's crusade to destroy America
Vice President Dick Cheney
and do the right
takes a
thing.
question from David Rockefeller.
Reach us back. Call us, 772-905-3018.
There's a need for a new world order. Someday, in the next few years, a solution will emerge.
We Are Change with host Howard Nima, exposing the collectivist global elite's Malthusian quest for a new world order. A one-world dictatorial government where all aspects of human life are under their control. Truth Talk Radio, where news the mainstream media ignores is the top story and your voice is heard. We Are Change. Fridays from 1 to 3 p.m. and Saturdays from 3 to 5 p.m. Eastern and Saturdays.
All right, folks, little thing there from Howard Nima, who actually took the time to get a hold of the White House and Joseph Lieberman. And Joseph Lieberman, he's always walked the middle. You know, he's been the swing vote on a lot of things. But in the end, they all side with the New World Order. And the interesting thing about this vote on Senate Bill 1867, which does take away your freedom and allow for your indefinite incarceration without any charges, without you having committed any crime at all. The interesting thing about it is that it was approved 93-7. 93-7. And this is interesting for two reasons. First off, nobody abstained from voting. Nobody said, well, I'm just not going to show up. They all voted. 100% of them voted. That's a little bit odd right there. And the second thing is that 93% of them voted with the New World Order, voted for the New World Order. So it's almost like this was some kind of litmus test where the New World Order was looking at them and saying either you're going to vote, you know, the way we want you to vote here, or you're going to pay a heavy, heavy cost. It'll be interesting to see what happens to those 7 who voted against it. Maybe nothing. But the way things usually work is people want to do things that are politically safe. And voting to indefinitely incarcerate the American people is not a smart political move. So why did 93% of them make that move? They didn't need 93%. They needed 51. So you have 42 people there that decided to put their political futures on the line in order to stay in good graces with the New World Order. That's the way I see it. You're listening to Hardcore Harry, and I am death to the New World Order, streaming to you live at freethinkradio.com, unitedtruthseekers.com, and eternally at d2nwo.com.
What happened? You got shot. What's your name? What's your name? What's your name? Wake up. What's your name? What's your name?
That violent clash between police and Occupy Oakland protesters on October 25th took the movement to a whole new level. Police resorted to using tear gas, rubber bullets, and other projectiles in an attempt to evict the protesters. 24-year-old Scott Olson, an Iraq War veteran who did 2 tours in Iraq, was critically injured when he was hit in the head by a police projectile, reportedly a tear gas canister. He ended up in the hospital with a fractured skull and without the ability to speak. 1 month later, Scott is on his way to a full recovery, but there is still no official answer about what hit him that night and who launched it. An investigation of the Oakland Police Department is ongoing. America, let me introduce you to a tough Wisconsin kid. Scott Olson, Iraq War veteran and member of the Iraq Veterans Against the War, joins me tonight. Scott, thanks for your time. Americans want to know how you're doing. How's your recovery going?
Well, I'm doing better every day. Every day I feel better, and it's not always been a pleasant process. It's been quite frustrating, but I'm doing better.
Scott, how hard was this for you in recovery, knowing that you couldn't talk, that you had to slowly bring that back? That had to be really scary. Talk about that.
Yeah, it was really weird. My brain was mostly working okay, but I couldn't get these words out of my mouth, and I had a head full of words that I wanted to say, but I couldn't make them come out. It was very frustrating.
What do you remember about the night you were hit?
I remember almost everything. I wasn't there that long. I was standing next to my friend in the navy dress blues, and we were standing there for the right that we had to exist there, to be there.
What do you know about the investigation into who fired the projectile that hit you?
All I really know is that there is an investigation underway. I haven't been updated on the status of it, so we'll see about that in the future.
Were you shocked that it got to this level? And what did you think of that environment when it was happening?
I don't know. I mean, when I woke up in the hospital, it was kind of weird to be a national news story like I became. It was a bit overwhelming, but I'm happy to step into these shoes and guide this movement and be somebody to look up to for some people.
Do you regret going out there?
Not at all.
Will you do it again?
Yeah.
And why are you out there?
I'm there protecting the rights that we have. When I took the enlistment oath, when I joined the Marines, I swore to uphold and defend the Constitution from enemies, foreign and domestic, and I'm continuing to do that.
Where do you think the movement is now, Scott?
It's tough to say. It's been changing a lot, but I don't think it's going anywhere anytime soon. I think it's the only place I think it's going is up, gaining interest.
What do you think about the mayor of Oakland, her decision to crack down on the protesters?
I don't think it was right for her to do that. We have the right to be in Oscar Grant Plaza and to voice our redress for grievances any time of day.
I have to ask you, people have called you un-American. What's your response to that?
I've been called a disgrace before this even happened, just for my views on the war and other things like that. And it upsets me, but it doesn't surprise me to hear.
Scott Olson, I want to thank you for coming on the program tonight. God bless you. Keep fighting hard and keep recovering, and we'll follow your recovery. All the best to you, my friend.
Thank you, Ed.
That's The Ed Show. I'm Ed Schultz. You can listen to my radio show, Sirius XM Radio, Channel 127, Monday through Friday, noon to 3 p.m. You can follow me on Twitter at Ed Show, and we got Ed. The Rachel Maddow.
No, thank you. We don't need to be listening to that show. Well, if Scott Olson there is faking it, he's doing an extremely good job. That's legitimate and obvious brain damage, isn't it? Now, the fact that they're even debating who shot Scott Olson after I made a video showing who shot Scott Olson is a bit irritating. And if I'd have thought about it, I would have included that clip in this broadcast, but it just did not occur to me. I'm not even going into it. You can YouTube D2NWO Scott Olson and you'll find who shot him. But the legitimate injury on the part of this apparently legitimate activist doesn't take away from the fact that the entire Occupy movement is New World Order controlled opposition. Remember what they did when they quote-unquote killed bin Laden, putting out several different versions of the lie. There was a shootout. There wasn't a shootout. He held his wife in front of him. He didn't hold his wife in front of him. He got shot in the eye. He didn't get shot in the eye. You understand? This is no different. You basically take a story, and when somebody finds the truth about it, like me, and says, hey, this is bogus, this is New World Order controlled opposition, then you start putting it in the mainstream media in 1,000 different ways. And then people talk about what some Marine named Shamar, and they'll talk about Scott Olson, is he okay? And they'll talk about all these different things related to the Occupy movement to the point where people think the Occupy movement is a movement, forgetting that it is all controlled opposition to begin with. It's the equivalent of dumping bin Laden's body in the ocean. But this is probably a little too advanced for a lot of people to understand. So I'm going to move on to that police state article. The sad thing is that this used to be the land of the free and the home of the brave. So what in the world happened? A fundamentalist shift in our culture has taken place. The American people have eagerly given up huge chunks of liberty and freedom in exchange for vague promises of increased security. Have we gotten increased security? No. You know, it's almost like somebody kicks in your door in the middle of the night. And then they tell you, I'll tell you what, give me all your stuff and then I'll guard your house and make sure nobody else breaks in. Because freedom is all you truly have. Your car doesn't mean anything. Your house doesn't mean anything. Your property doesn't mean anything if you're not free. You know, they're talking about putting a tax on driving. A fee per mile. Every mile you drive costs 3 cents or 5 cents. Every mile. It's unbelievable. It's completely unbelievable. But they will do it. Inevitably, they'll do it. Without freedom, you really have nothing. A fundamental shift has taken place in the culture. The country is now run by total control freaks, and paranoia has become standard operating procedure. Now, this is because everybody is living under fear-based mind control. On 9/11, they were scared really bad. They were shown the pictures of, you know, some guy with a long beard. A lot of us went on the internet and saw video of beheadings that we were told the radical Islams did. People were scared and they gave up their rights. Even if only by their own inaction, they gave up their rights. Now, at the time, I was thinking to myself, I don't understand this because, and obviously, I'm always armed to the teeth. I'm thinking, I can kill them faster than they can get off a boat. So what exactly is it with this police state? You know, why is the police state getting so big? Why don't they just let us take care of business? You know, we saw in Katrina that when it hits the fan, the first thing the government's going to do is come for your guns. And now looking back, obviously I can see what's going on here, which is that it was all orchestrated in order to take away your freedom to begin with. And people will say, yeah, they wanted an oil pipeline across Afghanistan. They wanted this, they wanted that. But the most important thing was they had to take control of their own populations. They had to enslave the people, take away any vestige of freedom that might remain from, you know, some something you heard out of a history book about your forefathers. It all has to go. It's like a fire, what's it called? Fire sale? Everything has to go. You have to be left with nothing but pop culture entertainment and just vague memories of what the American flag looks like. And they're going to take it all. We were told that terrorists hate our liberties and our freedoms, and we need to fight the terrorists so that we could keep our liberties and our freedoms, but instead the government keeps taking away the liberties and the freedoms. How in the world does that make any sense? Have the terrorists won? Yes, because the terrorists are the new world order that attacked you on 9/11. And I don't mean the Muslims. As a country, we've moved so far in the direction of communist China, the USSR, and Nazi Germany that it is almost impossible to believe. And again, that's because in wartime, a culture can be changed at 10 times the pace a culture can be changed or socially engineered during times of peace. This is an added incentive to be at war. Turning the United States of America into a giant prison may make us all slightly safer, but what kind of life is this? This isn't even true. Turning the entire country into a giant prison virtually guarantees your enslavement or your death. Do we want to be dead while we are still alive? Okay, that sentence seems kind of out of place. Doesn't make much sense. Maybe it's because I haven't slept since Friday. Is this the price we want to pay in order to feel slightly safer? Where are the millions of Americans that still yearn to breathe free air? America is supposed to be a land teeming with people thirsting for independence. For example, live free or die is supposed to be the motto of the state of New Hampshire, but instead the motto of most Americans seems to be live scared and die cowering. We don't have to live like this. Yes, bad things are always going to happen. No amount of security is ever going to be able to keep us 100% safe. Look, screw this article. You're living under trauma-based mind control. Wake up and realize the Muslims didn't attack you. Face your true enemy. You're listening to Hardcore Harry, and I am death to the New World Order, streaming to you live at freethinkradio.com, unitedtruthseekers.com, and eternally at d2nwo.com. Okay, what we're looking at here is a mobile Berlin Wall. You understand? Like the Berlin Wall, and it's mobile. This is not good. There's the actual Berlin Wall before it was torn down. Just like I told you that they have the mobile police towers. They have mobile walls now. And it's almost hard to believe. It's such an oppressive police state technique, such an oppressive tactic. And I will tell you that while I was in New York, and actually you can see this from some of the video from the Occupy movement, they would use the orange barriers to try to almost net people like your fish or something. They had the steel barriers up a lot of places, and when there's too many people in one spot, they'd try and net you. Of course, it's orange. You can see it coming from a mile away. But now they have big, probably, I don't know, are they aluminum walls? We're going to be bringing Ray from Manchester onto the show shortly. I had to reinstall my tablet, so I'm downloading Skype, which I'm going to have done first. So we will be having Ray on the broadcast at 7 p.m., assuming this all goes good. In the meantime, let's talk about 10 outlandish things the scientific controllers have in mind for you in the near future. What corporate-driven science has in mind for the future of humanity is far different than the dreamy utopian landscape that's been portrayed by the mainstream media. To hear the corporate-run media tell it science is always good for humanity. Scientific achievements are always called advances and not setbacks. I mean, imagine if they reported in a giant setback today, the Searle Company has discovered aspartame. But no, that's not how it's reported, is it? Science is always good for humanity. Their achievements are called advances and not setbacks, even though many of them have proven to be disastrous for humanity. While pure science is indeed a necessary component of any civilization which seeks to expand its understanding of the universe, what we see dominating the landscape today isn't pure science, but a corporate-driven science that only seeks to accelerate corporate profits, not human understanding. With that corporate slanted science comes a whole new era of truly terrifying technologies that we may soon see become reality in our world. So we're going to talk about some of these in the brief little bit of time we have here, as I try to also get Skype running on the tablet. Organ harvesting from genetically modified, patented pigs. Of course, this has been going on in the sense that pig organs are more compatible with people than anything else. You know, we've had people have a pig heart put in them. Need a replacement heart or lung? No worries. Monsanto will grow you a new one using genetically modified, trans-species, patent pending, that was raised on GMO animal feed and subjected to organ harvesting while it was still alive in order to keep the organs fresh. And this brings me back to something that it's a topic I've flirted with before that nobody else will touch. And it has to do with experimenting on animals. It has to do with committing heinous acts in the quest for knowledge. It has to do with evil. And I'm not going to get into it here, but I will say, because people know how to reach me now, I have a couple profiles on Facebook. I need people to send me any information they have showing there's a link between animal experimentation and Satanism. Ritual sacrifice, you understand? Ritual sacrifice. And in fact, in an experiment, the animal is literally called on paper a sacrifice. You understand? Let's move on to number 2. Behavioral vaccines that rewire your brain to eliminate dissent. behavioral vaccines that rewire your brain to eliminate dissent. I mean, imagine that. Imagine if I came here Monday and I was like, yeah, I got a vaccination. And then I was like, you know, this whole New World Order thing, it's just, I think we're going down the wrong trail. I don't think there's anything to it. Because that's what they're talking about here. Disobedience is a disease, and the cure for disobedience, or ODD, oppositional defiance disorder, as they call it, will be a new vaccine that biologically rewires your brain to make you more socially acceptable to the controllers. It will be called a behavioral vaccine, and we already know of one. It's called FunVax. FunVax. Put it in YouTube. FUNDVAX. Or maybe it's FUNVAX. It's already invented. It will be called a behavioral vaccine, even though in reality it is just a chemical lobotomy. This technology will be a cornerstone of the global police state, which will have no tolerance for independent thought or critical thought of any kind, especially against the state. And you can't help but be reminded of Aldous Huxley's Brave New World, where when people got a little too alive, they would be sprayed down by soma, and all of a sudden they would become calm and lethargic. Coming up at 7, we will have Ray. You're listening to Hardcore Harry, and I am death to the New World Order, streaming to you live at freethinkradio.com, unitedtruthseekers.com, and eternally at d2nwo.com.
On a mission, you need a position. Put a curtain on the wagon, take a look what's inside. 10 cents a bottle can wash away your troubles. Usually it's double, but today it's half price. Be forewarned, don't be fooled by invitations. Like a demonstration, snake oil merchant. Snake oil merchant. Cure the affliction that I'm feeling inside. Will the tonic make me dizzy, or make me too busy? Is it flat or is it fizzy? What the hell is inside? Be forewarned, don't be fooled by imitations. She's like another demonstration. Snake oil merchants. Snake oil merchants. Snake oil merchants. Snake oil merchants. Listen to the vision, take a stand.
What's that, Ray?
I said you do look a little bit tired.
Yes, I certainly am. Hey, folks, so we have Ray from Manchester on the broadcast now, and I've got a little echo, but how are you doing tonight, Ray?
Yeah, I'm doing okay. Been watching your broadcast with interest.
All right, so I've downloaded a file now. I'm going to go ahead and see if I can dig that up, and then we'll see where we're going to go with it.
Yeah.
And your file right there, Civil Unrest and Troops on the Street by Alan Watt. Do you want me to go ahead and play it?
Yeah, you might as well play. Well, just let me give a brief introduction. This was a broadcast from Alan Watt from 3 years ago, and jigsaw pieces coming together, and that you start to realise that this information about what Senate Bill S 1867 is really about. The information has been out there circulating for a long time, and basically play the track and people will see that this is a New World Order plan to basically take America down.
But now they're telling us through predictive programming,
all right, well then here we go,
from official sources, what to expect in the very near future. It's interesting too that out of all the movies that are getting churned out right now, I think the next 8 or 9 that's coming out at this moment, the first top of them, the first 8 or 9 are all disaster type movies with martial law and the troops in the streets, rationing, that kind of stuff, and a well-equipped military, a sinister black-clothed military lording it over people. That's also predictive programming, and it falls in, I should say, with the long-term strategy for the next 30 or maybe 40 years of what they have announced from their top think tanks from the military of Britain and the US to do with the coming riots and the coming disasters, etc., etc. But in reality, all planned that way. Planned, and you have to go back through all the treaties and conventions signed on behalf of your countries to the United Nations and with the United Nations towards a sustainable world, as they call it. Sustainable sounds quite nice. It isn't until you go into what they mean that it becomes a horror show, because they talk openly about the necessity of bringing down the entire population of the world into a small portion, maybe 500 million people ideally, to serve the dominant minority. And I'll be back with more about what's coming up after this break. Talking about what's coming up in the future and how really we're being told to prepare ourselves psychologically so we won't be so freaked out when we see troops on the streets and so on. And I'm really talking to the choir here, I'm sure, because we've been following this kind of thing, I'm sure most of you, for years. We've been watching, many of us, from long before 9/11 came along in 2001, and watched the strategies towards totalitarianism.
You know what, I just realized I need to stop the live stream and restart it. So I'm going to do that, and then we'll start Alan Watt from the top, because the volume wasn't good anyway.